Well, joining me on the show today to discuss the rebranding exercise of Zomato and examples of other companies that have potentially rebranded and what it means for them and for their consumers are Dilip, Cherian and Lloyd. Mathias. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me here on Morning Brief at 9 this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let me start with you, Dilip. First, it's good to have you back on News 9 after a while. Zomato is rebranding to Eternal, and netizens are going absolutely wild. They feel that the Zomato app is going to be discontinued, and Zomato is making clarifications that no, the Zomato app will continue as is unabated. But rebranding exercises is nothing new. We've seen it over the past many decades of businesses. I think starting with Google's parent being rebranded as Alphabet, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp parent being rebranded as Meta. And here back in India, we've got our own examples as well. Paytm's parent is called 197 Communication. So what is the big deal and why do companies go ahead and rebrand their parents?
I think that the reasons why companies are attempting to change their brands is essentially three. One, they run into problems with the way they are designated. That could be the case with Paytm. The second is when they have mega acquisitions, which are eating up a large part of the time or the share profile of their companies, which could be the Zomato reason. And the third is when there is either a controversy or some kind of niggling doubts about the nature of the brand itself as a result of changed consumer preferences, market perceptions, etc. So I would say that the logic needs to be seen within the context of both the company as well as the competitive scenario in which it is operating. I think that this needs to be done with great care, fabulous research, and intense study of how consumers will react. And the kind of reaction from netizens about fears about what the app is going to be called is the kind of trigger point that you need to avoid.
Let's bring in Lloyd, Mathias into this discussion. Lloyd, from what we've heard, Dilip just mentioning the multiple reasons why brands undergo rebranding. And in this case, you're not talking about the brand itself being rebranded, but the parent as a whole being rebranded. Could it be perhaps to do with the fact that the quick commerce bundle within the parent company is likely to outshine the food delivery app, and that is what the parent was erstwhile referred to as? So could there be a play between which business and which element within a conglomerate is likely to drive profitability, and hence it may be counterproductive to have the brand name talk about a separate offering? Lloyd, if you could unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you for having me on your show, Kartik. Absolutely. I think with this name change, Zomato seeks to set the stage for expansion beyond its core food delivery and to an extent you can say right now it's quick commerce business. What Zomato has really known over the last decade has really been for its food delivery. And this signals bigger ambitions for the future. Zomato's brand, which is strongly being linked with food delivery, I think they're looking at it in a manner which I would call as typical corporate evolution. When a parent company shares its name with its flagship brand, sometimes that becomes a little, it becomes a little limiting. I think the Zomato board sees the opportunity of moving well beyond its core two businesses, one being food delivery through Zomato, and then, of course, the quick commerce business Blinkit, which actually right now is growing at a pace much faster. I think through this restructuring, what they're really doing is setting the groundwork to eventually evolve it into a full-fledged holding company, right? I think the first stage is what is called multi-brands. They have 4 multi-brands, out of which 2 are relatively small, which is Hyperpure and District. And I think really they're trying to evolve into a full-fledged holding company with multiple brands under it. I think this gives the company the flexibility in the long run to, I think, broad-base, diversify, or indeed even hive off some not so profitable businesses. So this kind of helps them shuffle the pack almost as much as, let's say, a Meta or Alphabet did when they elevated the holding company and separating the kind of operating brands or operating businesses over time, from maps to mail and such like. So I think it's a similar process that Zomato is doing.
All right, Dilip, Cherian, I want to understand, some of these global examples that Lloyd just pointed out. While in the case of Google, I think the strategy has worked out fairly well because Alphabet now represents everything from the search engine to artificial intelligence, which could be in the form of Gemini and beyond, as well as, the Google Maps business and the Google Pay, which is really effective here in India for a business case for Alphabet. But something like Meta, could that have been, an example to be used as to how things can go wrong? Because at one point, Meta was betting big on the metaverse, and that really did not take off.
Yeah, that distinctly is an example of global misfiring. There's no doubt that an obsession with a particular stream of thought, and usually by the founder, can be a mistake in terms of going across to consumers and to a larger market. Is Eternal going to do that? My suspicion is that Eternal seems to be, like Lloyd says, reflecting corporate ambition. And Eternal is a bit high-pitched, I would say. The whole business of instant delivery itself is being questioned in multiple places for a variety of reasons. And I worry that you are displaying a kind of ambition that perhaps is justified by some other acquisition that you have in mind, as the Zomato management may well have. But, do you need to do that till more vectors are at play? Sometimes you get into a hurry to do this because remember, this kind of rebranding at the holding company level can only be done once in a given number of years. So it's a different thing to rebrand your products, which, for example, Levers has done with multiple products, they've had issues with market pushback or ethical pushback on some products and what they are meant to do. But I think that, displaying a greater measure and ensuring that the communications, what is key in any of these things is communications, and the investments that both Meta and Alphabet had to do to ensure that the company's visibility was of a certain kind is a commitment that companies like Zomato will have to do.
Absolutely. So I think brand communication, Lloyd, becomes a very, very important function here. And I remember it's been what? It's been more than 1.5 years since Elon Musk bought Twitter. And every time Twitter is now referred to as X, I think the bracket in every print publication, every digital article also says formerly Twitter. So, the whole communication aspect is something which requires a lot of explaining for viewers over a long period of time. So, at a time like that, do you think there was really a case for Zomato to have a high-browed parent name like Eternal?
Valid point. I think the first part, I think Zomato needs a lot more to do, clear the confusion that Zomato, the food delivery app, remains unaltered, right? So very clearly they have to establish that part because some of this communication has kind of blurred the issue and people generally have concerns. So I think that clearly is a big failing. I think the second thing is we have to recognize that Zomato has emerged as one of India's largest consumer internet companies last year with its market cap touching what, almost 3 lakh crores, right? So I think as it's growing larger, the ambitions are growing. I think they've tasted great success in Blinkit. In a year and a half, Blinkit has emerged as among the largest quick commerce players. I think this is an opportunity when the board and the founder is looking beyond the core food delivery and quick commerce and possibly looking to evolve into a logistics and a tech company at large with various lines of businesses. And like I said, over time, they might shuffle around. They might even divest or sell some businesses or maybe list some of them independently. Who's to say one day Blinkit could well be an independent entity? So I think it's preparing the ground for a larger play for group Zomato, now called Eternal, and therefore have various different vectors of businesses. In that sense, it's a very, very laudable move. How they're going to establish Eternal in terms of, kind of holding it as a purely holding company and making sure communication is transparent down the line that Zomato, Blinkit are going to be absolutely independent entities, and obviously Hyperpure, District, and the other brands or the other divisions they hope to launch,
Right.
I think is a matter that will play out.
All right, so let's stay with the quick commerce boon and digress a little bit beyond just the brand name. Dilip Cherian, now you had a story last week that Zepto is now going to deliver test drive of the Skoda Kayak in 10 minutes. Right now, you have another news report over the weekend which comes that there's a startup by the name of Topmate.io, which is going to deliver people to offer you career counseling in 10 minutes. Are we taking this whole 10-minute delivery narrative too far?
Without a doubt. I think that it's becoming a bit of a joke in many product categories. And what could eventually happen is that there could be category shaming. And I think that we are at a stage where it's one thing to deliver a set of branded grocery items or something. But when it comes to clothing or people or HR advice, I think companies are doing this in a sense, as a strategy of market entry by shock and awe. But I think it's on the verge of being pilloried, and it's not likely to be a very large business. However, in the technology space, never say that anything is never going to grow into a big business. Perhaps we will be shockingly surprised. But I would say that in many cases, this instant gratification model is becoming a bit of a conundrum as far as quality is concerned of the product itself.
Right, quality concerns, and never say never. Lloyd, final input from you. Is 2025 going to be the year of further explosion of quick commerce, or are we likely to see some consolidation in the space?
Kartik, I agree to a large extent with what Dilip said. I think sometimes this tends to stretch itself too wide. Having said which, I must say that when Blinkit first launched, I thought this 10-minute thing was taking things too far. And then I saw how it altered people's buying habits. I mean, it's very common for families to sit on a breakfast table and suddenly discover, hey, the butter's run out or bread's run out. And then sitting on the table, the youngest in the family would typically Blinkit some bread, butter, jam, or whatever it takes. So I think it's altering behavior to a large extent. We're also looking at a younger generation that's very impatient. They want it now. And it's not just about food and groceries and regular supplies, right? Slowly it's about apparel, it's about books and various things they need. So I would not really question the direction. I know that some brands will go overboard, they'll promise too much. And I think 10 minutes could possibly stretch over time to being within half an hour. But we have to recognize that there is an instant gratification generation taking center stage. Their behavior is vastly different. The things they want are different. The time they need them is different. So I think quick commerce is here to stay. It will grow. There might be a few mishaps along the way. But by and large, I think we are in an era where a lot of things will be needed, almost real time. And I think we have to accept that and therefore look at quick commerce growth in that context.
Absolutely. Well, you're talking about instant gratification, and it's not just restricted to groceries and your cheese or your butter running out, but iPhone 16 was one of the hottest selling items on quick delivery platforms last year when it launched. But let's leave it at that for now. Lloyd, Mathias, Dilip Cherian, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us here on Morning Brief at 9.